Welcome to this episode of Educational Psychology. And today we are going to talk about memory. We are going to understand what memory is, the topic of memory in educational psychology. Just like I've said, these videos that I'm creating for you guys, they are based on the notes of Mr. Mwangiru Achilufia from TVTC. And I believe as we progress, they'll help you in your studies, whether you are doing this as a student or you are doing it for a personal study so that you understand how what educational psychology is, so that it may help you in your professional or in your teaching career. So let's get into it without wasting much of your time. So today we are talking about memory. We want to understand what memory is. So what is memory? Memory is the psychological concept, a mental record of past experiences in our heads. So the mental record, the records of all past experiences in your head, that's what memory is. It's a psychological concept. It talks of it's a mental record of past experience, the records that are kept. So when you look at it in this way, when you have record, for example, in maybe accounts there, we have record books in your teaching, maybe at church, you have records. The records, those information that you keep, that the things that have happened that you keep for future references, so that you have information about what has happened. So in the same way now, when we are talking about memory, we are talking about mental record of your past experiences. So these records are in your head. They are in your head. So it is the ability to reproduce at some later time what we have experienced earlier. So the ability to retrieve, to reproduce what, to reproduce at some time later what we have experienced. So if I ask you, what happened the first time you reported at the college or university? You tell me your mind will quickly go and search and bring out information of what happened the first day you reported, and you will even be able to tell certain details that you may not have realized that your mind picked, but because your mind keeps a record of your experiences, then you will be able to retrieve that information at a later time, because the question that I'm asking you is demanding or calling for information that has happened in the past. You can go even as far as back as far as you can remember. So it's the ability to reproduce at some later time what we have experienced. That's memory. It is the process of encoding, storing, and retrieval of information from the brain when we need it. So it's the process of encoding. What is to encode? To encode is to transform information in a form that it can be stored in our heads. So as you experience something, maybe you experience pain. When you experience pain, that pain has to be encoded, to be transformed in a certain way, in a certain form, in a form that can be stored in your head, in your brain. That's what encoding is. And then there is the storing, and then afterwards there is the retrieval of that information. That's what memory is all about. So when we are talking about this topic of memory, this is what you need to know. You need to realize memory, you need to understand memory is the psychological concept. It's a mental record of your past experiences in our heads, of the past experiences in our heads. It's the ability to reproduce at some later time what we have experienced earlier. It is the process of encoding, storing, and retrieval of information from the brain when we need it. So the process of memory, this is what it looks like. Memory is the process which involves the following steps or processes. So the first step of this process of memory is encoding. To encode, what is to encode? Is to transform to transform the information detected by the sensory input, by the stimuli, the sensory input as your senses detect certain information. Now, transforming what your senses have detected into a form that it can be installed in your brain. That's what encoding is. Then there is the process of storing that information in the brain, and also there is the retrieval of that information at some later time. That is that's what the process of memory contains or consists of. So this is what we are looking at. This is what we are looking at. This is an amazing topic, and once you understand this, it helps you even to know how you can apply this in your life, even how it can you can help others, how you can apply this in your life to learn and also to help others learn. No wonder this is one of the most important topics that you have to understand even as a trainee teacher. So now let's look at the levels of memory. So memory has levels. So the first level of memory is sensory memory. So a sensory memory, it is the initial representation of proximal stimuli when a sensory system, within a sensory system, and lasts for a moment between 3 to 5 seconds. It is the initial representation of the proximal stimuli within a sensory system and lasts for a moment between 3 to 5 seconds. What does this mean? So what this means is that in your sensory system, so your sensory system consists of all the five senses. We talk of the sense of touch, the sense of um, the sense of what there is taste, there is all the five senses that you have. You have, so those are consisted in a sensory system. Now, all those five senses that you have, when they detect when they detect something from the stimuli, from the outside stimuli, now this detection of the sensory, now the experience that you have, maybe if someone was to strike you, your sense of touch will feel pain, will detect pain. Now, that period, that information which your sensory system has detected, and that period, it lasts about 3 to 5 seconds. That period is what we are calling the sensory memory. So your that representation, that initial, it is at the first stage. It's the first thing that happens when it comes to storing information. So imagine when you are born, your mind is born more like a blank CD. There is nothing in the memory. There is nothing that is stored. So even if you experience something, if someone was to give you maybe a needle or a knife, you wouldn't know what a knife is because you don't have reference to it. You don't have experience to of that thing that you can refer to recognize that that's a knife. But when that first experience, and then you are told, okay, this is a knife, it's dangerous, it can do this and this and this. So when that first experience you have, before you are even able to maybe understand it, to learn what it is all about, that first experience, when you hold it, your senses have detected, oh, I'm holding something hard, it's a metal, something that is sharp. You just noticed. So that detection, that's what we are calling sensory memory, and this just lasts about 3 to 5 seconds. Then we have the short-term memory. The short-term memory, it is more long-lasting but still temporary. The content of the short-term memory typically are available to the consciousness of for only 15 to 20 seconds after initial input, unless they are repeatedly refreshed or rehearsed. It has a limited capacity of information it can store or keep. So remember, like we said, memory, the process of memory, it is encoding, then there is storing, and then there is retrieval. So when the first stage on the levels, the first level where you detect information and even encode the information, then the short-term memory stores that information. But when this information is stored, it's for the sensory memory, it's stored for 3 to 5 seconds. For the short-term memory, it's stored for 15 to 20 seconds, unless that information or that experience is repeated or refreshed or rehearsed. That's what happens. So now the last level is the long-term memory. It lasts indefinitely. It consists of all of a person's stored knowledge and past experiences. This is where information is stored permanently and as unlimited capacity of information it can store. I want you to get that one. It lasts indefinitely. It consists of all of the person's stored knowledge and experiences. This is where information is stored permanently and has unlimited capacity of information it can store. This is amazing. This is amazing. So this is how, when we are talking about memory, because we define memory as the ability to even retrieve information at a later time. At a later time, you retrieve that information at a later time when it's needed. The information that is in your head, the experiences, that is the records of the experiences that are in your head, you retrieve that. So how information moves is this. So the first time you detect information, your information is in a sensory state, I can say, or sensory form. So when you detect information, that information is then encoded. When the information is encoded, it's stored in a sensory memory. Then it is transferred to a short-term memory, and then if you continue to rehearse, repeat the information, refresh, practice, then that information will be stored in a long-term memory. And once that information is stored in your long-term memory, it is permanent in your mind. You cannot forget. You cannot forget. When that information is called upon, you will remember. So even as a trainee teacher or even as a student, when you are learning, you are studying, your goal is to figure out, to learn how to bring information from the sensory memory to the long-term memory. And once something gets into your long-term memory, that means you know that you cannot forget it. This is so profound. I hope you are getting value from this lesson. So mental images move in the following way: from sensory memory, short-term memory, and then to the long-term memory. That is what we are talking about. So this is in the next video, we are going to talk about factors that can enhance your memory, because I don't want this video to be that long. So let's go and meet in the next video. Let's meet in the next video for the next session so that we can complete this topic on memory. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.